February in Kenya is one of those months that, honestly, separates the thoughtful gardener from the reactive one. While most of the country is, navigating the short dry spell that sits between the short rains and the long rain season, your living soil garden is quietly holding moisture, feeding biology, and just waiting to reward you for every seed you put in the ground. If you have been following this channel, you already know that living soil is not just a method, it is a relationship between you, your crops, and the billions of organisms working beneath the surface. This month, that relationship really gets tested and proven. So, here is what went into my living soil beds in February, why each crop was chosen, and how you can replicate this for maximum harvest and income. Leafy greens are honestly the backbone of every living soil garden. Sukuma wiki, the name itself means push the weak forward in Swahili, is the first thing I plant when the soil is right. In a living soil system, kale and collards do something pretty remarkable. The root exudates, they release, actively feed mycorrhizal fungi, which in return unlock phosphorus and micronutrients that the plant needs for thick, dark, nutrient-dense leaves. Research published in the journal Agronomy confirms that organic matter-rich soils significantly improve the yield and nutritional profile of brassica species compared to conventional setups. In February, Sukuma goes in as transplants raised 2 to 3 weeks prior, so they hit the beds just as temperatures are warm but before the blazing heat of March. Spinach is, honestly, one of my non-negotiables for this month. It germinates fast, it grows fast, and it moves fast at the market. In living soil with adequate compost, spinach can be ready for harvest in as little as 30 to 40 days. The key in February is moisture management. Spurti in bapun submao, in bapur bakor in spurti, bin puni ninas dan, imbon Risbadan really hates drought stress, which causes premature bolting. A well-mulched living soil bed retains moisture long enough between irrigation cycles to keep spinach in peak production. I direct seed spinach in shallow drills about 2 centimeters deep, in rows spaced 20 centimeters apart. Managu, the African nightshade, honestly deserves far more attention than it gets in modern gardens. This traditional vegetable is a real nutritional powerhouse. Studies from the Kenya Medical Research Institute and various ethnobotanical reviews have documented its high iron, calcium, and vitamin content, making it more nutritious in several metrics than exotic leafy greens like Swiss chard. In living soil, manaju is particularly at home because it has evolved alongside African soils and their native microbiome. It self-seeds, grows with minimal inputs, and commands strong prices at local markets, especially in urban areas where consumers are rediscovering traditional vegetables. I scatter-seed it across a prepared bed in thin seedlings to about 30 centimeters once they emerge. Lettuce rounds out my leafy greens section, but I treat it with care in February. The current temperatures in Nakuru and similar highlands are warm, and lettuce prefers a cooler root zone. This is where living soil does something that no amount of chemical fertilizer can replicate. The biological activity in the soil and the thick mulch layer keep the root zone several degrees cooler than the air temperature, which is exactly what lettuce needs to prevent premature bolting. I grow varieties like Great Lakes, or locally available loose-leaf types, direct seeding at shallow depth and covering lightly with fine compost. Roots and bulbs, are a slow and steady income. Red bulb onions are a February priority in my nursery beds. Onions started in nurseries this month will be ready for transplanting in 6 to 8 weeks, putting them in the ground at the perfect window to mature ahead of the long rains. In living soil, onion transplants establish with noticeably less transplant shock because the microbial communities in the soil produce natural plant growth hormones, specifically indole-3 acetic acid, or IAA, that stimulate root development. For the nursery, I use fine, well-sifted compost mixed with topsoil at a 1-to-1 ratio, seeding thickly and thinning later. Nakuru's loamy volcanic soil is genuinely ideal for bulb development. Carrots are something I plant with full confidence in February because the current cooler highland nights are favorable for root development. The most important factor for carrots in any system is soil structure, and this is where living soil delivers its most visible advantage. Compacted, lifeless soil produces forked, stunted carrots. living soil, built with compost, cover crops, and biological activity, creates a loose, friable structure that allows carrot roots to grow straight and long. I double dig or broad fork my carrot beds before seeding to ensure at least 30 centimeters of loose depth, then seed directly and cover with a thin layer of compost to prevent crust formation. Beetroot is a crop I describe as a niche market crown jewel. Most small-scale farmers overlook it, which means the gardeners who do grow it reliably often face less competition and, honestly, stronger prices. Beetroot is rich in betalains, antioxidants, and nitrates that have documented cardiovascular benefits, making it super attractive to health-conscious urban consumers. In living soil, the high potassium availability from well-composted organic matter supports excellent root development and sugar accumulation. I direct seed beetroot in clusters of 2 to 3 seeds per station, thinning to one strong plant once they reach about 5 centimeters. Radish is my fast cash crop, and I recommend it to every gardener reading this who needs cash flow within weeks, not months. Radish can be harvested in 22 to 30 days under good conditions. In living soil with consistent moisture, they are even faster. I use radish as a companion crop between slower-growing vegetables like tomatoes and capsicum, filling gap space that would otherwise go to weeds, while generating income during the waiting period. I seed radish at 2 centimeters deep in rows 15 centimeters apart, and they need almost no attention between seeding and harvest. Vegetables and legumes, high value, high impact. Cucumbers are arguably one of the best return on investment crops in my February garden. They mature in 45 to 60 days, produce prolifically with regular harvesting, and the demand in Kenyan markets, both local and export, is strong. In living soil, cucumbers develop unusually robust root systems that access nutrients and moisture across a wide area, which directly translates to more fruits per plant. The critical practice here is staking or trellising. Cucumbers allowed to trail on the ground suffer from fungal disease, slug damage, and irregular fruit development. I trellis mine vertically, which also makes harvesting easier and, really improves air circulation. Tomatoes and capsicum, or pilipili hoho, are, month-round staples here, but planting them in February really sets them up for peak production in April and May. And that timing often matches up with strong market prices before the long-range harvest flood. I usually go for disease-tolerant hybrid varieties like Rambo F1 or Anna F1 when it comes to tomatoes, since they've got proven resistance to common Kenyan tomato challenges like fusarium wilt and bacterial spot. For capsicum, varieties such as California Wonder or Yolo Wonder are, honestly, reliable performers. In living soil, the suppressive biology you get from compost-enriched beds actually reduces soil-borne pathogen pressure. And that's one of the biggest production advantages you can have. I always start these crops in nurseries and transplant them at the 4 to 5 true leaf stage. Bush beans are going into my garden this month in staggered successions. Every 2 weeks I sow a new row or a bed section, so I end up having beans ready to harvest on a rolling 8 to 10 day cycle instead of just one big crop all at once. But beyond the obvious harvest benefits, beans are doing something invisible but extremely valuable. Their root nodules, in partnership with rhizobium bacteria, fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. Research estimates that legumes can fix anywhere from 50 to 200 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per season, depending on the conditions. In a living soil system where the rhizobium population is healthy and active, this number can actually reach the higher end. So, every bean crop I grow is also, really, a soil-building event. Zucchini is a crop that, honestly, surprises most first-time growers with just how productive it can be. A single well-established plant in living soil, if you harvest it at the right immature stage, that's around 15 to 20 centimeters, can actually produce fruit every 2 to 3 days. The key thing to remember is never to let your zucchini grow into a mature marrow while it's still on the plant. If you do, it signals the plant to slow down or even stop producing. Personally, I like to grow 2 to 3 plants in a bed that's about 2 square meters, and I always make sure to put a generous pocket of mature compost beneath each transplant at planting. Oh, and those large zucchini leaves? They double up as a living mulch, helping to reduce moisture loss from the soil surface. Herbs really do offer small space, high returns. Coriander, or dhania as we call it, is honestly the silent income generator in my herb section. It takes up very little space, is ready in just 30 to 45 days, and demand in Kenyan markets is steady all year because it's used in pretty much every cuisine. In living soil, coriander develops a much stronger aroma and flavor than what you'd get from conventional growing, and that's thanks to sulfur and trace minerals, made available by all the biological activity in rich compost beds. I always direct seed coriander thickly, then harvest with scissors just above the growing point so it can regrow. This way, a single bed can give you 3 to 4 cuts before the plants bolt. Basil, rosemary and thyme fill out my herb section as premium crops that fetch really good prices for the small space they use. Rosemary and thyme are perennial here in the Kenyan highlands, so one planting can give you harvests for years. Basil is a bit more sensitive to cold nights, but it thrives in Nakuru's February conditions. These herbs are in high demand with restaurants, health-conscious households, and herb traders. Plus, their essential oil content, the stuff that gives them flavor, aroma, and market value, is actually higher in organically grown, living soil setups. That's not just my opinion. It's backed by multiple peer-reviewed studies on aromatic herb cultivation in organic systems. The 3 practices that really make February planting work, let's talk about those. First off, mulching is simply not optional in February. It's honestly the single most impactful thing you can do for your living soil beds during this dry period. A 10-centimeter layer of dry grass, straw, or even wood chips at the soil surface can reduce evaporation by up to 70%. That's not just a guess, it's straight from FAO research on dryland soil management in sub-Saharan Africa. But it's more than just water savings. Mulch also protects your soil biology from UV rays and temperature swings that can kill off the good fungi and bacteria living near the surface. In living soil, the mulch layer is constantly being broken down by soil organisms, which means you're always adding organic matter. I lay fresh mulch at planting and top it up every 2 to 3 weeks. Next, succession planting is the strategy that turns a garden from just a hobby into a reliable supply system. Instead of planting all your spinach or beans on the same day and getting a huge glut all at once, I stagger my plantings every 10 to 14 days. This way, there's a steady rolling harvest, and you can keep supplying markets and households week after week. For living soil gardeners in Kenya, this approach also spreads out your irrigation and soil management tasks so you don't get overwhelmed at one time and then have nothing to do later. Finally, irrigation in February really needs to be intentional. In living soil, you want consistent moisture, not soaking wet and definitely not bone dry. The ideal is what we call field capacity. Soil that holds water in its pores but still lets oxygen in. Too much water kills off aerobic soil life and can cause root rot, while dry soil puts biology to sleep and locks up nutrients. I check by sticking a finger about 5 centimeters into the soil. If it feels damp but not wet, you're good. If it's dry at that depth, it's time to water. Drip irrigation is honestly the best for living soil systems because it delivers water right to the root zone without soaking the mulch and compost surface too much. Join the living soil community. Every crop in this February planting list has been carefully chosen because it really works in living soil, it thrives in Kenyan highland conditions, and it just makes sense, financially and nutritionally, for real gardeners. This isn't just theory. It's what's actually growing in the ground right now, documented and shared to help you build a garden that feeds your family and supports your income. The living soil approach rewards gardeners who are patient and observant, who understand that soil isn't just a medium, but a living ecosystem. When you nurture it, it gives back more than you put in. If you got even one idea from this guide that's worth trying, consider subscribing to the Living Soil Garden YouTube channel for weekly, practical, evidence-based content that's built for real conditions in real Kenyan gardens. And please, share this guide with another gardener, a neighbor with some land, or anyone in your community who's ready to grow food with intention. The more we share what works, the stronger our food systems become. See you in the next video. There's always more to learn, and always more to grow.